Hi! Now a while ago, Waves released its Curves Equator plugin, which everybody started making videos about at the time of its release. But I kind of held off on this a bit, thinking that it was pretty similar to the Soothe plugin, which I already have. But I figured by now it's time to check it out anyway, and I have to say it's a very interesting and useful plugin, and there's more to it than I initially thought. So let's go! Now before we check out this plugin, Waves did provide me with a Creative Access subscription so that I can check out all of their new and old plugins, and they also gave me an affiliate link in the description below, but this is not a sponsored video. They did not pay me to make this video and they're not seeing it before you. And as with all plugin reviews on YouTube, it's always good to check out the plugin yourself before you decide to buy it, so that you can see whether it's useful and whether it works for you. Now with all that out of the way, let's check out Waves Curves Equator. So this is the Waves webpage for the new plugin. You can currently buy it for $40, and that's apparently an introductory price because normally it would cost $79. So if we scroll down, you see a lot of the use cases over here: debiting guitars, deharshing drum buses, double bass drum leak removal, mastering low-mid cleanup. So a lot of use cases, and we'll check some of them out a bit later in the video. But as to the question, what is Curves Equator? Well, Curves Equator is a smarter resonance suppression plugin. It immediately improves any full mix, vocal instrument or sample by removing problematic frequencies, fixing resonances and balancing inconsistencies. So let's have a first look at it in Cubase. Yeah, so this is a plugin, and what you see over here is this main line over here, which is the so-called threshold curve. And you can move it by hovering over this big control, and then you can move it up and down. And basically where you put the curve determines how much audio is processed, because the actual processing of the audio is indicated in blue on top here. So the lower the curve, the bigger the part of my audio is that's above the curve, and you can see that that's exactly the audio that's being processed. If I put the curve really high above my audio, you can see that almost nothing is processed. So that's actually the main control in Curves Equator. You set your threshold curve, and that determines which part of the audio gets processed. And then pretty much all the other controls, and there's more than I just showed you because there's also advanced controls over here, but more about that later. But all the other controls basically determine how you're going to process the audio, which is above your threshold curve. And yes, in that respect, it's very much like Soothe, where you also set a curve to determine which part of your audio gets processed, but the curve actually goes the other way. In Soothe, you need to raise the curve to determine which part of your audio gets processed. I actually think that this way is a bit more intuitive, but I guess it's just what you're used to. Looking at this plugin though, I do feel that Waves had a good look and listened to what people had to say about Soothe and what could be improved, and that they kind of took the step towards improving on what Soothe already offered. But again, judge for yourself from what I'm going to show you and let you listen to, and by trying it out yourself, of course. So let's have a more detailed look at the controls and what they offer. Now, as an example, I'm playing a live track from my band Wash called Inner Drive, which is actually an old release that you're no longer going to find on Spotify. But without processing, it sounds like this.
I can live two lives if I would. No, it satisfies more. Do one thing good.
And let's put Curves Equator on it, and you see and listen to what it does.
I can live two lives if I would. No, it satisfies more. Do one thing good. You're the
So that was quite an extreme setting, but you can also look at the delta, where it actually shaves off.
two lives if I would. No, it satisfies more. Do one thing good.
And before I further explain all the controls, let's just try a preset to see what that does to my audio. For example, Master Bus 1 over here. It's a gentle curve that's a bit higher in the bass region as in the high frequency region. Let's see what that does to my audio.
I can live two lives if I would. No, it satisfies more. Do one thing good. You're the better of me.
Yeah, I do have to say that I feel it already improved the sound of the mix. It makes it a bit less muddy and it just smooths it out a bit more. And it actually makes it sound a bit louder, even though over here you have your auto makeup gain enabled. So it should keep it at the same loudness actually. Let's see if that is actually the case. Let's use Cubase's loudness meter over here and play a part of the beginning without Curves Equator.
I can live two lives if I would.
It reads about minus 21.5. Let's play the same part with Curves Equator.
I can live two lives if I would.
Well, minus 21.4, so that's maybe a tenth of a dB louder, or it's just measuring inaccuracy. So the loudness is actually not higher, but it does sound significantly louder to me. Interesting. Now if we go back to a full reset, and let's take away the advanced controls for a minute, you can see that it starts with a straight curve over here. But you can actually change that in various ways. For example, there's this shape control here, which you can set to pink, warm or flat. And that basically means that any curve you have set, right now it's straight, but also if you have a non-straight curve, you can morph it into a pink noise curve, a warm curve, or a flat curve. For example, it's now flat already, but you can see if I gradually change the shape to the full length, it morphs into the standard pink noise curve. So if you want to shape your curve more towards pink noise, or even a warm curve, which is even more extreme, working on the high end and less on the low end, then you can basically use this shape control to do exactly that. Now another way to affect the curve is by using nodes. So you can basically just double click over here, and then as with an EQ you can set the type of node, either a low shelf, a bell or a high shelf filter. You can set the gain, the frequency and the Q factor to make it tighter or more broad. For example, if there's a very specific resonance area that you want to affect, you can just pull it down there, or maybe the whole high end, and more of the audio will be above that line on this side and will therefore be more affected, as you can see over here. If you double click on a node, it's disabled, it still stays there. You can also remove it again by using this trash icon. And in this way, you can just basically shape your curve exactly the way you want. And you can have 8 nodes in total. Well, we've looked at the shape control already, which you can of course still use to morph this curve into, in this case, the warm curve. But there's also the tilt control, and this basically allows you to tilt the whole curve, either in the direction of the high end or more in the direction of the low end, so that you don't have to move all the individual nodes if you hear that in general you want to affect the high end more than the low end, for example. Now over here you can also see a little button which is called crossover, which you can enable, and then you can see that the frequency spectrum gets divided into 4 areas, which you can move, by the way. And there's a line in the middle of each frequency area, meaning that you can adjust the reduction amount of this band. And as you can see, all bands are currently set to cut 100%, just a standard amount, which is all determined of course by how high or low this curve is above your audio. But you can also set certain bands to cut more. For example, if I drag this down, you can see that this band is now set to cut 200%, so twice as much as in the default setting. Or, and that's probably even more useful, you can also set this band to not cut at all. So now this band is set to cut 0, which means that even though the audio is above the curve over here, it will still not work on these frequencies because I've set the cut to 0. And for all the other bands, it's still at 100%. Now at this point, if you like this video or find it useful at all, please give it a big thumbs up for the YouTube algorithm so that it gets shown to more people. Subscribe to the channel, and you can ring the little bell icon if you want to get notified when I publish another video. If you are really enjoying the content on this channel, you can also use the super thanks button below the video, which is a virtual tip jar, or use any of the affiliate links in the description to these stores. If you intend to buy anything at these stores anyway, if you then first click the affiliate link to that store before buying, I will get a small commission on your purchase, whatever you buy at that store. So it's not just for the specific products that I'm also linking to in the description. And one of those products that I'm linking to is actually Waves Equator as well. So if you want to pick that up, you can do it via my affiliate link, which is very, very much appreciated and helps keep the channel going. But let's get back to Waves Equator. Now, apart from shaping the curve yourself, you can also let the curve be derived from your audio. Let's have a look at that. And if you push the learn button here and then play audio, it will basically listen to your audio and will learn your curve. You can apply, if you feel that it has heard enough, you can also push auto apply, which will usually make it learn a little bit longer. And now you can see that the curve is pretty much shaped as my audio, and it's set at a level to sort of shave off the peak. So this is actually more for fine-tuning your audio, maybe in a mastering context. So let's have a listen.
I can live two lives if I would. No, it satisfies more.
Yeah, again, to me, it sounds louder, more smooth, less muddy, which is all good. Now, there's also many other use cases that you can use this plugin for, and that's by using the sidechain here, which allows you to derive the curve from another track. So let's have a look at that. And I will use the classic kick and bass sidechain compression over here. So let's first have a listen to the kick and bass playing together. Yeah, so they're stepping on each other's toes a bit, and what you can then typically do is use sidechain compression on the bass so that it dips a bit in volume when the kick hits, so that the kick basically really punches when it hits and the bass guitar is not in the way, and when the kick is out of the way, the bass guitar comes up and fills out the low end. Now you can do a similar thing with this Curves Equator, but in a better way. So in Cubase I've set up the sidechain over here, and the sidechain is coming from the kick channel, and then you can route this into Curves Equator by using the sidechain button over here. So let's feed it with some audio and let's push the learn button. Click auto apply so that it automatically stops when it has learned enough. And Curves Equator has now basically learned the curve from the sidechain input, and it applies this curve to the bass guitar so that the bass guitar frequencies basically get cut where the kick is hitting. So let's have a listen to that. However, what you basically notice now is that the bass guitar frequencies are always affected by this kick curve, also when the kick is not hitting. So in order to get what we really want is that the bass guitar frequencies are only dipped when the kick is hitting. You can push the rider button over here, and now you can see that the bass guitar is only affected when the kick hits. Yeah, that's when you set it really extreme, of course, but that's just so you can hear it a little bit better. So this is really frequency dependent sidechain compression, kind of very similar to what a tool like Trackspacer does, for example, but it's all in here in Curves Equator of Waves as well. Now there are many other use cases for this, of course. You can, for example, dip the instrumental a bit when a vocal is singing, and then very much only in the frequencies where the vocal is singing, or let some kind of lead instrument shine through. There are a lot of practical use cases for this. Now let's have a look at the advanced controls and turn on the advanced controls. You can see that you get attack and release, which basically allows you to tune the speed behavior of the EQ band gain reductions, very much in the same way that a compressor works. You have the precision, which determines how deep and how narrow the bands are for the affected signal. Over here you can see that the affected frequencies now follow the actual frequencies of the track much more, and if you turn down the precision you can see that it's a much smoother curve. Now looking further at the advanced controls, we already discussed the tilt control, but you can also set the tilt frequency, so where that tilt happens, whether it happens around a very low frequency or a much higher frequency. There's also a smoothing control which allows you to smooth the threshold curve. There's a mix control which is now turned to 100%, but you can basically mix the effect with the original signal. There's a limiter on there because of course this process can cause certain frequencies to be exaggerated a bit, especially due to the auto gain. And then the limiter makes sure that it doesn't overshoot. It has an output ceiling of minus 0.1 dB. And you can set the balance of whether the Curves Equator affects the left or right side in equal amounts. But you can also set it to MS mode, and then you can determine whether the effect gets applied maybe only on the middle and not on the sides, or the other way around. Now there's also the left-right split mode, and this applies independent processing on the left and right channels, so for the stereo configuration based on the balance control setting. So let's try another use case on a vocal track, for example. So this is a vocal just from a sample library. Let's have a listen without Curves Equator on there.
You should run, 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 only said and done. Mama, please don't cry, he'll come back at night.
You can hear that it's quite sibilant, a bit harsh. So let's see what Curves Equator can do on this. And let's choose a preset. Maybe this one, resolve vocal issues, and load the preset in all controls. So this preset really cuts the low frequencies here, because even the band is set to 200% over here. The mid band is set to 0% here, so Curves Equator is not affecting that at all. And the high band is affected, and they're probably having this dip over here to try to get rid of some sibilance and harshness. So let's actually listen to the audio.
You should run, 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 all is said and done. Mama, please don't cry, he'll come back at night. You should run, 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 all is said and done. I don't forget you, you will be the one.
Yeah, it's an improvement. The voice sounds less muddy, less harsh, and the sibilance is less, not gone. But let's see if we can tame it a bit more.
You should run, 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 all is said and done.
I think the sibilance is in this area over here, so let's add a note and dip it over here a bit. Some bell. Let's make it pretty extreme. Bit of a wider Q. Let's see if that tames it a bit more.
You should run, 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 all is said and done. Mama, please don't cry, he'll come back at night.
Yeah, I hope you can hear that on YouTube as well, but it definitely gets rid of the sibilance more in this way. So that's another use case for this plugin. So what do you think? Is this useful to you? Are you maybe using Soothe 2 already for this? And do you notice or see any differences? Let us know in the comments. You have to remember, of course, that Soothe 2 is much more expensive. Let's have a look what it costs at the moment. Okay, Soothe 2 costs 199 euros at the moment, and Curves Equator is $39. So that's around 5 times cheaper, which is quite huge. So again, let me know what you think in the comments. I'm very interested. Now, if you like these videos about plugins, I also have a video about my 5 favorite Waves plugins right here. So check it out, enjoy, and see you soon.